Her family loved her when she was paying their bills, but the moment she needed help, they turned their backs. They mocked her. They cut her off. And that was the exact moment Olivia Carter won $62 million. Now let me take you to the beginning. Olivia was 35 when all of this began. She lived in Texas, working as an accountant at a small construction firm. Her job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. She was the kind of woman who woke up early, brewed cheap coffee in her old drip machine, packed a homemade sandwich for lunch, and drove to work in her 10-year-old Corolla with the cracked windshield. Her life was modest, painfully ordinary. She clipped coupons every Sunday, scrolled through grocery store apps for discounts, and debated with herself whether she could afford to go out for dinner with friends. She had no mansion, no diamonds, no luxury vacations, just a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint, long hours at work, and the constant shadow of bills hanging over her head. And yet none of this mattered to her family, because in their eyes, Olivia was a failure. Her father used to tell her, "You're smart enough to do more. Why waste your life in some small office?" Her mother never missed a chance to compare her to her siblings. Melissa with her perfect suburban life, Jacob with his endless charm, even Brian, the youngest, who seemed to stumble through life yet always managed to be praised. Melissa, married to a successful dentist, once looked Olivia up and down and sneered, "Still renting? You're throwing your money away. When are you going to grow up?" And Jacob treated her like a bank with no interest rate. They didn't see Olivia the person. They saw Olivia the provider, the one who would always sacrifice. And sacrifice she did. When Jacob fell into gambling debt, it was Olivia who drained $15,000 from her savings. He swore with tears in his eyes, "I'll pay you back, Liv." I promise she believed him. Years passed. Not a penny returned. When her father's insurance denied coverage for surgery, Olivia signed the loan papers herself. She worked late nights balancing spreadsheets under fluorescent lights just to make those payments. Her father never mentioned it again, never even said thank you. When Melissa wanted to open a nail salon, Olivia handed over the seed money. Melissa hugged her and said, "You'll get it back in no time." But the business thrived, and still, not a single dollar came back to Olivia. Time and time again, Olivia gave. And every time she told herself, "It's family. Family is worth it." But here's the truth. Love, when it only flows one way, begins to rot. And deep inside, Olivia carried a wound that never healed. She loved them, yes, but she also resented them. She asked herself late at night, staring at the ceiling, if I disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice me? If I wasn't there to fix their problems? This was the storm beneath her calm exterior, a storm no one saw because Olivia always smiled, always said yes, always sacrificed. And then came the day everything changed. A lottery ticket, 6 numbers, $62 million. But before I tell you what happened next, let me introduce myself. My name is Victoria Steele. I am a family attorney with over 20 years of experience. I have stood in countless courtrooms, watching families tear themselves apart over love, betrayal, and money. I have fought for betrayed spouses, abandoned children, and partners left with nothing. And if there's one thing I've learned in all those years, it's this: money doesn't change people, it reveals them. When Olivia walked into my office with her secret, I knew this wasn't just about winning the lottery. It wasn't about numbers on a check. It was about truth, about seeing her family for who they really were once the mask was stripped away. And that, my friends, is the story I'm about to tell you. Before I tell you what Olivia did next, let me pause for a moment. Stories like hers don't just entertain. They teach us about loyalty, family, and the truth hidden behind money. So if you want to keep uncovering stories like this, hit subscribe right now, tap the bell, and stay with me. Because what you're about to hear will change the way you think about family forever. Now let's go back to that Tuesday night. Olivia sat alone at her kitchen table. It was late, just past 9 p.m. A cold carton of Chinese takeout sat half-eaten in front of her, and the glow of her laptop screen reflected on the wall. Bills were scattered across the table. Rent, utilities, her lingering student loan. It was an ordinary night in an ordinary life. Until she picked up a small slip of paper, a lottery ticket, 6 numbers she had chosen at random the week before. She wasn't expecting anything. In fact, buying tickets had always been a guilty little habit. Her father called it a tax on people who don't understand math. Her brother joked, "Just give me the money directly, it's the same thing." But for Olivia, it was a tiny flicker of hope, a $2 chance at freedom. She checked the first number. It matched. Her heart skipped. The second, another match. The third. Her hands began to shake. The fourth. Her chest tightened. The fifth. Her breath caught. And then, the 6th number lit up on her phone screen. It matched. All 6. Olivia sat frozen in silence, her fork slipping from her hand. She refreshed the page again and again, convinced it must be a mistake. But it wasn't. The truth glared back at her. $62 million. Her first reaction wasn't joy. It was shock. Terror, even. Because in that moment she understood. This kind of money doesn't just change your life. It changes how everyone around you sees you. And she was right. The next morning, she didn't tell a soul. Not her parents, not her siblings, not even her closest friend. Instead, she made an appointment. Not with a banker, not with a financial planner, with a lawyer. That's where I came in. When Olivia sat across from me in my office, she whispered, "I can't let them know. If they find out, I'll never have a life again. What do I do?" I told her the truth. In some U.S. states, lottery winners can remain anonymous. In others, their names are public record the moment they claim the prize. Texas, where Olivia lived, was one of those states that required names to be published. That meant she had to move carefully. We created a blind trust, a legal entity that would claim the prize in her place. That way, the check would not have Olivia Carter on it. It would have the name of the trust. From there, we built layers of protection, an attorney, a financial advisor, and a tax consultant. Because here's something most people don't know. The IRS takes 24% of lottery winnings right off the top, and then the state may add its own taxes, depending on where you live. If you win $62 million, you don't walk away with $62 million. You're lucky to see $40 million after federal and state cuts. Olivia listened in silence, gripping her purse as if it contained her entire soul. When I told her the exact amount she'd likely receive, just under $40 million, her eyes widened. Still, she said nothing. Finally, she whispered, "What if I just keep living the same? What if I never tell them?" I leaned forward and told her the truth I'd seen play out in dozens of families. Money doesn't ruin relationships. It only shows you what those relationships really are. Olivia nodded slowly. She already knew this, because deep down, she had one burning question eating at her heart. If I were the one in trouble, who in my family would actually help me? And that was the moment the plan began to take shape. Olivia left my office that day with her mind racing. She wasn't just holding a lottery ticket worth millions of dollars. She was holding a secret that, if revealed, could change her life forever. But instead of running into the streets shouting with joy or calling her family to share the news, Olivia stayed silent. And in that silence, a daring idea began to form. If money truly reveals who people are, then why not test it? Why not create a scenario, a simple story to see how her family would react if she were the one in need? That was the birth of what Olivia called the $5,000 test. That evening, she sat at the small wooden table in her one-bedroom apartment. She pulled out a worn leather notebook she had once used for work and wrote 3 words across the first page in big letters: the $5,000 test. The plan was deceptively simple. She would tell her family that her company had downsized and she had lost her job. Her savings were gone, the bills were piling up, and she was on the verge of losing her apartment. The story had to be believable, detailed enough to hold up under questioning. So Olivia chose her number carefully. $5,000. Not too small, something that could be brushed off with pocket change, and not so large that it would seem impossible. 5,000, she thought to herself, is the kind of amount an ordinary person could manage if they truly wanted to help. It was a figure both practical and symbolic, enough to measure love. When she explained this plan to me, I nodded slowly. In my 20 years as a family attorney, I had seen countless cases where people showed their true colors, not over millions, but over modest amounts. It is never the inheritance of a mansion that destroys families. It is the fight over a few thousand, a car, or a piece of jewelry. Small numbers have a way of cutting deeper than large ones. Olivia made a list in her notebook. Her father, her mother, Jacob, the older brother, Melissa, the sister, Brian, the youngest. Each would receive the same story. Each would be asked for the same $5,000, and Olivia would record their reactions like a researcher, noting tone of voice, words, and excuses. She wasn't doing this for the money. She didn't need it. She had more than enough sitting in accounts under the blind trust we had created. But what she didn't have was truth. And truth, as she saw it, was worth far more than $5,000. That night, Olivia rehearsed in front of her bathroom mirror. She practiced the right expression, anxious, worried, tired, but not desperate. She repeated her lines. I just lost my job. My savings are gone. I only need $5,000 to get through the next 2 months. I promise I'll pay you back. The words echoed in the small apartment, heavy with irony, because Olivia remembered with painful clarity the times she had given so much more to these same people. $15,000 to Jacob, thousands more to her father's surgery, seed money for Melissa's salon, all without hesitation, all without repayment. And now, for the first time in her life, she would put them in her shoes. I will never forget the look in Olivia's eyes when she told me about her plan. It wasn't the look of a wealthy woman who had just struck gold. It was the look of someone wounded, someone who had carried silent resentment for years, desperate to finally know the truth. In her notebook, she drew a chart with columns, name, reaction, notes. She was preparing herself for disappointment, but deep down, she still hoped. She hoped at least one person in her family would say, "You don't have to worry. We'll get through this together." And if no one said those words, then Olivia would finally know. Once and for all, she would see that the love she had been clinging to was nothing more than an illusion. Those blank pages waited for answers, answers Olivia had avoided all her life. And so, the $5,000 test began. The first call Olivia made was to her father. Her hand shook as she held the phone. She rehearsed her lines one last time, steadying her breath. When he answered, his tone was flat, almost impatient. "Hi, Dad," Olivia began softly. I need to talk to you." A pause. "Go ahead," he said. Already his voice carried judgment. Olivia swallowed hard. "Dad, the company I worked for cut staff. I was laid off last week. I've been applying, but nothing yet. The bills are piling up. I don't know how I'll make rent. I hate to ask this, but could you help me with $5,000? Just enough for 2 months. I promise I'll pay you back." Silence. Long, heavy silence. She could almost hear him frown through the phone. Finally, he spoke. "Olivia, you're 35 years old. Life is hard. You need to stand on your own." Her throat tightened. "Dad, I don't come to you often. I've always tried to handle things myself." "Then handle this," he snapped. "You should have saved. You should have planned better. $5,000? That's a lot of money. I have retirement to think about. Stephanie and I worked hard for that. We can't just dip into it because you failed to plan." Her hand trembled, and then memories struck like lightning. Her father in a hospital bed, the beeping of machines, the doctor explaining the surgery wasn't covered, and her, signing the loan papers, working nights, paying for the operation that saved his life. She whispered, voice breaking, "Dad, do you remember that surgery? Do you remember who paid for it?" Another pause. "That was different," he said quickly. "That was an emergency." "So is this," Olivia whispered, but he didn't answer. He sighed instead. "Olivia, you've got to grow up. I can't bail you out anymore. Maybe this is the lesson you need." Her vision blurred. Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to scream, but no words came. Only one thought echoed, sharp and bitter. Where is a father's love now? The line went dead. He had ended the call. Slowly, Olivia picked up her notebook. Her pen scratched across the page. Reaction refused. Notes. Told me to stand on my own. Mentioned retirement. Forgot I paid for his surgery. The ink smeared where her tears fell. It wasn't just rejection. It was betrayal, disguised as tough love. And here, I want to pause as her attorney. In many American families, there's a cultural belief. Once you're grown, you're fully responsible for yourself. Parents often call it tough love. They think helping adult children only breeds weakness. But what Olivia faced wasn't tough love. It was selective memory. She had been independent. She had given more than her father ever admitted. She had paid for his second chance at life. And when she needed just a fraction of that love in return, he turned away. That's the cruel irony in families like hers. Love becomes conditional. Help becomes transactional. Loyalty flows only one way. This was just the beginning. Her father had failed the test. And deep down, Olivia feared the rest of her family would follow. The second call Olivia made was to her mother. This one was harder, not because the story had changed, but because Olivia still believed, deep down, that a mother should be different. Her mom answered, cheerful, the TV humming in the background. "Olivia, did you see Melissa's pictures from Hawaii? The kids look adorable." Always Melissa, always the favorite. Olivia steadied her voice. "Mom, I lost my job. I'm behind on rent. I need help. About $5,000 just to get me through a couple of months. I'll pay you back." Silence. Not sharp like her father's. Colder. The kind of silence that warns, don't expect much. Then her mother sighed. "Oh, honey, I love you, but I can't touch our retirement. Warren would never allow it. We've worked too hard. We're saving for the lake house. $5,000 is just too much right now." Olivia closed her eyes. A memory stabbed through her. Years ago, when her mother nearly lost her home, it was Olivia, barely surviving herself, who skipped meals, maxed out her card, and paid the mortgage. Her mother never mentioned it again. Now, when Olivia needed just a fraction in return, she got nothing. "Mom," she whispered, "do you remember who saved your house?" A pause. "Well, yes, but that was different. Things are tighter now. You understand, right?" No, Olivia thought. She didn't understand, because love isn't supposed to be measured against a retirement fund or a lake house. Her mother's tone grew brisk again, already moving on. "I'll pray for you, sweetie. Maybe this is a sign to change careers, but I can't help financially." Olivia's tears burned, but her words stayed steady. "Of course, Mom. I understand." When the call ended, she wrote in her notebook, "Reaction, refused, notes, said retirement and lake house. Forgot I paid her mortgage." This cut deeper than her father's rejection, because a father may hide behind tough love, but a mother's coldness, it carves straight into the heart. And here's what I want you to see, as her attorney. Rejection isn't always about money. It's about indifference. It's about realizing the one person who should love you unconditionally doesn't. Her mother, too, had failed the test. The next name on Olivia's list was Jacob, her older brother, the one she had rescued years ago when his gambling debts nearly destroyed him. $15,000. That was what she had given him. Money she didn't have. Money she scraped together through loans and overtime. And Jacob had promised, tearfully, desperately, that he would pay her back. He never did. Now, with her own story rehearsed, Olivia reached for the phone. She dialed. The line rang and rang, then clicked into voicemail. She left a message, calm but shaky. "Jacob, it's me. I lost my job. Things are really bad. I just need some help. About $5,000. I promise I'll pay you back. Please call me." She hung up, staring at the screen. Nothing. A few hours later, she tried again, straight to voicemail, again and again. By the third attempt, she didn't even bother leaving a message. But then, she saw it. Jacob's green dot glowing on Facebook. He was online, posting memes, liking photos, active, laughing, alive, but not answering his sister. Olivia's chest tightened. It wasn't just the silence. It was the knowledge that he saw her calls. He saw her messages, and he chose to ignore them. She typed a text, her hands trembling. "Jacob, I really need to talk to you. Please pick up. It's urgent." No response. Another day passed, still nothing. But on Facebook, there he was, sharing a picture of a poker table, tagging his friends. Caption, "Back in the game." Olivia sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the glow of her phone. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. This was her brother, the man she had once saved from losing everything. And now, when she needed a fraction of that same compassion, he had vanished. She opened her notebook. Under Jacob's name, she wrote, "Reaction, disappeared." Notes, ignored calls, ignored texts. Online on Facebook, but silent. As her attorney, I've seen this pattern more times than I can count. The people who owe you the most are often the first to vanish when you need them. It's guilt, it's shame, and sometimes it's arrogance. They believe their debt to you erases any obligation to ever help you again. But let's call it what it really is: cowardice. Jacob wasn't just unavailable, he was deliberately absent. He chose to disappear rather than face the mirror of his own hypocrisy. And for Olivia, that absence hurt more than any refusal. Because silence doesn't just deny help. Silence denies love. It says, "You are not worth even a reply." That night, Olivia sat in the dark, the phone heavy in her hand. Her brother had failed the test. And worse, he hadn't even shown the decency to say the word no. For Olivia, the message was clear. Jacob had disappeared not just from her request, but from their bond as siblings. And so, the third entry in her notebook was written. Her brother, the one she once sacrificed $15,000 for, had vanished when it was her turn. Next on Olivia's list was her sister, Melissa. Melissa had always lived in comparison to Olivia, but not the way most people might think. She was the one their mother bragged about, the golden child. Married to a successful dentist, living in a spacious suburban house, 2 kids in private school. The picture-perfect life. When Olivia dialed her sister's number, she told herself to breathe. Maybe Melissa, out of everyone, would understand. After all, Olivia had once given her the seed money for her nail salon, money that Melissa promised to repay, but never did. Surely Melissa would remember that. "Hey, sis," Melissa's voice chirped through the phone. "You caught me just as I was finishing some errands." "What's up?" Olivia hesitated, then began. "Melissa, I didn't want to bother you, but I lost my job. The company downsized, and I'm really struggling right now. I'm behind on rent, bills are stacking up. I just need some help, about $5,000 to get me through the next couple of months. I promise I'll pay you back." There was a pause, long enough that Olivia thought for a moment her sister might actually say yes. But then Melissa sighed. "Oh, Liv, I wish I could, but we just don't have any extra right now. Between the kids' tuition, the new car payment, and the bathroom remodel, Things are so tight. Paul is very strict about the budget. You know how he is. I'm really sorry." The words stung, but Olivia forced herself to stay calm. "I understand. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious." Melissa's tone brightened again, almost too quickly. "Of course. I'll keep you in my prayers. And who knows, maybe things will turn around for you soon. You've always been resourceful." The conversation ended there. Olivia hung up the phone and sat in silence, her chest heavy. Another refusal. Another family member unwilling to step forward when she needed them most. But the real blow didn't come until 2 days later. Olivia was scrolling through Facebook absent-mindedly when a new post appeared at the top of her feed. Melissa. A photo of her and Paul standing in front of a sparkling blue ocean. The caption read, "Finally made it to Hawaii. Much needed vacation. Blessed." Olivia stared at the screen. The words blurred. Her sister, who had just told her she had no money to spare, was on a luxury vacation in Hawaii. Her stomach turned. Not because of the money itself, but because of the lie. Melissa hadn't just refused, she had pretended she couldn't. She had looked her sister in the eye through the phone and lied. Olivia opened her notebook. Her hand shook as she wrote, "Reaction, refused. Notes, said she had no extra." 2 days later, Hawaii vacation photos. She closed the notebook slowly, tears burning in her eyes. This was worse than her father's lectures, worse than her mother's excuses, because this wasn't about tough love or retirement or priorities. This was betrayal, pure and deliberate. And here, I want to pause to explain something I've seen again and again in my work. In inheritance disputes, in lawsuits over family property, it is often sisters who become the fiercest opponents. What begins as affection turns into rivalry. What begins as closeness turns into bitterness. Why? Because when it comes to siblings, betrayal cuts twice as deep. A sister's rejection isn't just financial, it's personal. It says, "I choose my comfort over your survival." For Olivia, Melissa's lie was a revelation. Her sister hadn't just failed the $5,000 test, she had failed as a sister. The last person on Olivia's list was her youngest brother, Brian. Unlike Jacob and Melissa, Brian had always seemed gentler, softer, the kind of sibling who remembered birthdays, who sent her funny memes when she was down. If anyone might step up, Olivia thought, maybe it would be him. When she called, Brian picked up right away. "Liv! Hey, what's going on?" His voice was warm, familiar, almost comforting. Olivia steadied herself and told him the story. The layoff, the unpaid bills, the rent she couldn't cover. Her voice cracked slightly when she reached the request. "Brian, I just need some help. About $5,000, just until I find work. I swear I'll pay you back." There was silence, but it didn't feel cold like with their parents. Brian cleared his throat. "Wow. Liv, that's a lot, but you know what? Yeah, I'll help you. You've always been there for me. I'll figure something out." For the first time in days, Olivia felt a flicker of relief. Her chest loosened. Tears pricked her eyes, not from pain, but from gratitude. "Thank you, Brian. You don't know what this means to me." He promised to call her in a few days once he moved some money around. They hung up, and for the first time since the test began, Olivia let herself believe that at least one person in her family would not fail her. But 3 days later, the message came. "Hey, Liv, I talked it over with Emily. She doesn't think it's a good idea. We've got the kids' future to think about. I'm sorry, I really wanted to, but I can't. Please understand." Olivia stared at the text, her hands trembling. Her brother, the one who had promised, had folded under the weight of someone else's disapproval. It wasn't just the refusal, it was the breaking of hope. She whispered aloud to her empty apartment, "Not even a small promise." Not even that. The bitterness spread like poison through her chest, because rejection hurts, but betrayal of a promise cuts deeper. She opened her notebook. Her handwriting was jagged as she wrote, "Reaction. Initially promised help. Notes. 3 days later. Wife said no. Promise broken." As her attorney, I can tell you this. In family disputes, it's not always the loud betrayals that cause the deepest scars. Sometimes it's the quiet ones, the soft words of comfort that turn into silence, the promises whispered and then broken. And here's the hard truth. Brian thought he was doing the reasonable thing by listening to his wife. But what he really did was reveal that his loyalty was negotiable, that when tested, his bond with his sister was weaker than convenience. For Olivia, this was perhaps the cruelest failure of all, because it dangled hope in front of her, only to snatch it away. That night, she sat with her journal open, staring at the 4 entries. Father, refused. Mother, refused. Jacob, disappeared. Melissa, lied. Brian, promised, then broke. One by one, every member of her family had failed the $5,000 test. Olivia closed the notebook slowly, her heart hollow. She had wanted truth. Now she had it. And the truth was devastating. After 4 painful disappointments, Olivia almost didn't want to make the last call. Her notebook already told a grim story. Father, mother, brother, sister, all had failed her. Why put herself through it again? But then she thought of Grace. Grace wasn't like the others. She was her mother's younger sister, a retired elementary school teacher. Widowed for more than a decade, she lived modestly in a small rented house on the edge of town. Her car was a faded Toyota Camry from 1998, the kind that rattled when it started and coughed smoke on cold mornings. Her clothes were always simple, her meals frugal, her life quiet. And yet, Grace had something the others didn't. She'd always shown up. Birthdays, school recitals, graduations. Grace was there, clapping the loudest, smiling the warmest. She never had much to give financially, but her presence had always been a gift in itself. Still, Olivia hesitated. She knew Grace didn't have money to spare. Asking her felt almost cruel. But the test wasn't about amounts, it was about willingness. So with trembling hands, Olivia dialed. Grace answered on the second ring, her voice warm and steady. "Olivia, sweetheart, how are you?" That simple greeting nearly broke Olivia. No judgment, no impatience, just love. "Hi, Aunt Grace," Olivia said, her voice shaking. I didn't want to call, but I'm in a really bad spot. I lost my job and I can't make rent. I need about $5,000 to stay afloat for the next 2 months. I know it's a lot, but I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious." There was silence. But it wasn't the cold silence of her parents. It wasn't the evasive silence of Jacob. It wasn't the lying silence of Melissa. This silence was different. It was the sound of someone thinking, truly considering how to help. Finally, Grace spoke. "Olivia, you listen to me. I don't have $5,000. You know I don't. But I do have a little savings. It's not much, about $4,200. I'll give you $3,500 of it. It should help with rent at least." Olivia's eyes filled instantly. Her aunt was offering nearly everything she had. Not excuses, not lies, not conditions. Just help. "Aunt Grace, I can't take that from you. It's too much," Olivia whispered. But Grace cut her off. "Nonsense. Family helps family. You've always been there for everyone else. Now it's my turn. And listen, if you lose your apartment, you come stay with me. My sofa pulls out into a bed. It's not fancy, but it's home. You'll never be without a roof while I'm alive." Olivia couldn't hold back the sob that tore from her throat. All the rejection, all the betrayal, all the loneliness she had felt, it melted in the warmth of those words. She pressed the phone to her ear, whispering, "Thank you. Thank you so much." That night, Olivia didn't need to write much in her notebook. She only wrote, "Reaction, helped." Notes, offered $3,500 from $4,200 savings. Said, If you lose your home, come live with me. For me, as her attorney, this moment was the clearest truth of all. You see, generosity isn't about numbers. It isn't about who has the most. It's about who gives from the heart. Grace had the least, and yet she gave the most. And I'll tell you something else. In the courtroom, in estate battles, I've seen this pattern time and again. The ones with the most money are often the stingiest. The ones with the least are often the most giving. Because wealth hardens some hearts. But struggle, real struggle, teaches compassion. That is why, when the dust settled, Olivia didn't just see Grace as an aunt. She saw her as the only true family she had. If Olivia thought the silence and lies were the worst of it, she was wrong. The cruelest wound was yet to come. It started small, a whisper, a rumor, the kind that snakes through family gatherings and late-night phone calls. Someone had told someone else that Olivia wasn't just struggling. She was drowning, unemployed, broke, on the verge of losing everything. And instead of reaching out in concern, her family did something far more vicious. They laughed. Olivia discovered this by accident. One evening, she stopped by her father's house to drop off some papers he had asked for. She arrived quietly, the door slightly ajar, voices drifting from the living room. It was her father's voice. "Olivia's in trouble again. Can you believe it? She called me begging for money. $5,000 at her age. Honestly, it's pathetic." Melissa's voice joined in, laced with disdain. "I told you, Dad, she's always been irresponsible. If she can't manage her own bills, that's on her. Paul says we should cut ties before she drags us down. And honestly, I agree." Her father chuckled. "You're right. Better to cut her off now than have her leeching off us later." Melissa laughed too, sharp and cruel. "Exactly. I don't need her knocking on my door when she finally goes bankrupt. She made her bed. Now let her lie in it." The words hit Olivia like physical blows. She froze in the hallway, her breath caught in her chest. Her own family, her father, her sister, weren't just refusing to help. They were mocking her, plotting to erase her, treating her not as blood but as a burden to be discarded. Her knees nearly gave way beneath her. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from making a sound. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to remain silent, listening to every poisonous word. Melissa continued, almost gleefully. "Did you see her apartment? So tiny, so depressing. Honestly, I don't even know how she lives like that. No wonder she's desperate. But it's not my problem." Her father muttered in agreement. "She needs to grow up. She's always been weak. Best thing we can do is distance ourselves." And then, the final dagger. Melissa's voice again. "Let's just cut her off completely. Block her calls. Stop answering messages. If we keep giving her attention, she'll think she can still use us." Olivia staggered back from the doorway, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She turned and left quietly, unnoticed, the laughter of her family echoing behind her like a cruel soundtrack to betrayal. When she returned to her apartment, she collapsed onto the couch, shaking. It wasn't just rejection anymore, it was annihilation. They hadn't only denied her help, they had denied her humanity. She opened her notebook with trembling hands and wrote, "Reaction. Betrayal." Notes. Overheard Dad and Melissa mocking me. Said to cut ties. Laughed at my struggles. As her attorney, I want to pause here, because this moment was the true climax of Olivia's story. Not the silence, not the lies, but the cruelty. In family disputes, betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the people closest to you, the ones whose words have the power to heal or to destroy. And when they choose to destroy, it cuts deeper than any financial loss ever could. For Olivia, hearing her father and sister laugh at her pain was the breaking point. It wasn't about $5,000 anymore. It was about dignity. It was about love that never truly existed. That night, Olivia realized something she would never forget. Her family hadn't just failed her. They had abandoned her completely. After everything, the lies, the silence, the mockery, Olivia knew one thing for certain. She could no longer measure her family by blood, only by actions. Her notebook lay open on the table, filled with every betrayal, and at the very bottom, one name stood alone, shining like a light in the darkness: Grace. So Olivia made her decision. The first call she made was to her lawyer, me. Together we began drafting the paperwork that would transform Grace's life. Aunt Grace has always lived simply, Olivia told me, her voice trembling with both gratitude and determination. She gave me nearly everything she had when she thought I was desperate. I want to make sure she never struggles another day in her life. And so we did. Within weeks, a modest but beautiful cottage near the Texas coast was placed in Grace's name. Not a mansion, not a palace, but a place filled with sunshine, sea breezes, and security. A place where she could spend her days reading, gardening, and hosting Olivia without worry. Alongside the house, we created a retirement fund, carefully structured so she would have a steady income for the rest of her days. No more worrying about bills, no more scraping by. For the first time in her life, Grace would be free. When Olivia handed her the keys, Grace's hands shook. "Sweetheart," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I don't deserve this." Olivia pulled her into an embrace. "Yes, you do, more than anyone. Because when I had nothing, you gave me everything. And that's what family means." It was a moment of justice, a moment that reminded me why I fight for clients like Olivia. Because sometimes the law can't punish betrayal, but life itself can reward loyalty. But what about the others? Olivia's decision there was just as deliberate. She would not reveal the lottery win, not to her parents, not to Jacob, not to Melissa, not to Brian. She owed them nothing. Still, her heart wasn't made of stone. Her father's health had been fragile. So she arranged to have his medical bills paid, but she did it anonymously through the hospital. He would never know the source. And that was enough. As for Jacob, Melissa, and Brian, they received nothing. No secret payments, no second chances. Their names were crossed out in Olivia's notebook, underlined twice. Not out of vengeance, but out of clarity. Because Olivia finally understood. Enabling betrayal is just another form of self-betrayal. When she told me her plan, I looked at her and said, "You've created your own justice, Olivia, and sometimes that's the most powerful kind." And here's the truth, for all of you listening now. This wasn't just about money, it was about fairness. The aunt who gave selflessly was rewarded beyond her dreams. The siblings who mocked, ignored, and lied were cut off. And if you feel satisfaction hearing that, you're not alone. Because in a world where betrayal so often goes unpunished, Olivia's choice gave us something rare: balance, justice of the heart. You've heard Olivia's story, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the justice she carved for herself. But before we close, I want to speak directly to you. Olivia's choices weren't just emotional, they were strategic. And if you ever hold that winning ticket, you need to know what to do. As a family attorney for over 20 years, I've seen lives saved and destroyed by sudden wealth. Here are 5 rules that can protect both your fortune and your peace. Rule 1, stay silent. Don't announce it, not even to close friends. The second people know, you become a target. Silence is your shield. Rule 2, hire an estate attorney, not just any lawyer, one who understands trusts, taxes, and asset protection. Rule 3, claim through a trust or LLC. In states like Texas, Delaware, or Maryland, you can stay anonymous. Even in public states, entities can keep your name off the headlines. Rule 4, plan for taxes. The IRS takes 24% up front, but you may owe up to 37%. Add state taxes on top. Some take nothing, others take more than 10%. Without planning, millions vanish. Rule 5, invest safely, spend quietly. The fastest way to lose a fortune is to live like a millionaire on day one. Build a conservative portfolio, pay yourself modestly, blend in, because money buys comfort, but secrecy buys freedom. Olivia followed these steps. She built legal walls, paid wisely, invested safely, and while her family spiraled in greed, she stood untouchable. But more than strategy, Olivia left us with a truth. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. When she needed help, her father mocked her siblings turned away, her sister laughed at her pain, but one person, Aunt Grace, gave almost everything she had, not out of wealth, but out of love. I will never forget the moment Olivia handed Grace the keys to that seaside cottage. Grace whispered, "I don't deserve this." And Olivia answered, "Yes, you do. Because when I had nothing, you gave me everything." That is family, not the ones who demand or the ones who mock, but the ones who stand beside you when the world disappears. So now, picture it. Olivia and Grace on the balcony of that cottage, the ocean wind in their hair, sipping tea. No drama, no betrayal, just peace. And ask yourself, if you were in Olivia's place, who in your family would show up? Who would vanish? And who, like Grace, would give not because they had much, but because they had love? That's the question Olivia leaves with us. And it's the one I leave with you tonight. Because wealth isn't in numbers or houses. It's in the people who stay when you have nothing left but yourself. Remember Olivia's words. Money doesn't change people. It reveals them. And may you, too, find your grace. Now, if this story made you think, don't stop here. I am Victoria Steele, and for over 2 decades, I've witnessed families torn apart and sometimes healed by betrayal, loyalty, and the power of money. Follow this channel, because I'll share with you more real cases, more lessons, and more truths about what really happens when family, love, and fortune collide.